Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
I have a question. Has Zoom been doing this to anyone else? So it's randomly changing my background. I have never had a purple A as my background. And the last two Zoom calls, that's just what it, out of nowhere, that's what it did.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I have neither. I have two backgrounds that I use, and it just started changing them literally randomly.
Very odd. Wow. And there you go.
Whoa, what is this?
Good snowboarding one for you there.
Oh no, skiing, but that's not also, I did not put that in there.
I think your machine is possessed.
Oh God, let me figure out, that's very confusing. Let me see what I do here.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning, Matthew.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. So just give people a minute to join.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Though it's nearly evening here. So.
Yeah. Didn't want to guess. Where are you dialing in from, Matthew?
Oh, I'm from Central Europe, Italy. Yes.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm from London. Usually start with good morning, knowing full well that.
Yeah.
Good morning, Probe.
I remember from my IRC days, they have this universal greetings time, or where it's like if someone enters, it's always morning. It's just morning. Let's just get over it. Yeah.
And of course, you leave with a nice evening.
Yeah. Good way to start. So let me get the notes, paste it into chat. Good morning, Jacques. You missed a bit where we decided everywhere is morning, so.
Thought it was more traditional to decide that it's 5 p.m. somewhere.
Now, here we go.
Yeah, the sun's always over the Adam.
There we go. So yeah, if people can take a look at the notes and just add their name to the notes and agenda, that'd be great. And we got 1 or 2 more minutes and we'll kick off. A couple of things on the agenda today. Maybe I was just a few minutes earlier than normal. Henrik's on the call. For some reason, my maybe people haven't got their camera on. My Zoom is playing up a little bit as well. We do not have Brian on the call. Henrik. All right, look, 2 minutes past. Why don't we start? So, good morning, everyone. We've got an agenda to go through. First of all, as traditional, is there anyone who could act as scribe for us today? And as is traditional, thank you very much, Dan, for your continued efforts to keep us in sync with the appropriate scribing. Best in the industry, not even his day job.
At least I'll be known for something, you know. I mean, you know, you can't, you got to pick your thing.
You could have a great career ahead of you.
Absolutely. The cybersecurity thing doesn't work out. Completely agree. So we should start with any new friends. So does anyone want to raise their hand, give it a bit of an introduction and say who they are, where they're from, sort of interest, that sort of thing? Any takers?
I am a new friend. Hi. Oh, yay. Hey, Crobes clapping for me. My name is Jessica. I work at Intel. I'm the director of the open source program office, and this is my first time attending an OpenSSF working group meeting, but I'm interested in getting to know you all and sharing with you some stuff that my team has been working on. You want to know interests? I don't know. I have no interest outside of work. No, that's not true. I love reading. I love film. I love hanging out with my daughter and our dog and our cat and attempting to garden.
Very cool. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks.
Alexei, do you want to go?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Alexei. I'm working at Red Hat, but here I'm in less of my official capacity, but rather as an open source enthusiast of many years. I used to be a translator at the core infrastructure initiative best practices badge initiative, the application. And basically I got stuck around the whole affair, and I kept using the framework that has been devised back then in my own open source projects. I'm a C++ programmer. Yeah, I'm using the Qt framework, and I'm involved in the project called matrix.org, which provides the decentralized communication systems. So that's me.
Welcome, Alexei. Thanks for that. Any other new joiners on the call? Got quite a good roster today. I think a lot of people have already been here before. Anyone new? No. All right. Well, no, not everyone needs to speak up. We can just add your name to the list if you don't mind, so we can keep track of who's contributing. I'd appreciate it. So, couple of things to go through, and then we have any other business and any other notes from different working groups. But starting off with a couple of notes, there's the OSSF summit in Vancouver in May. Just really sort of raising for people's awareness more than anything else, but also, you know, is there interest in getting together as an end user group whilst people are out there? Or first of all, are people going? 3, 4, 4.5.
I might be bringing some new hats.
Cool. Do we get some? You bring for us too?
I might have a giveaway if I get a session accepted.
All right. Yeah, I'll be there, and I'm going to try and drag along some others to join the group, particularly some that are in the Pacific Northwest, like Boeing and whoever else I can encourage to be there. So I definitely want to use this as a recruitment tool for us, because there'll be lots of end users outside of this working group there for other foundation events.
Great call. Yeah, great call. I tried to do that in London with the recent state of open source. Got a couple of people interested there as well. That'd be cool. So, so I guess part of it was the sort of notification, and part of it was sort of whip up initial interest in maybe getting people together for perhaps a birds of a feather session or just a face-to-face meeting. Certainly drinks, and you know, I guess we'll bring it back up as we get closer to it. I mean, the CFP has already sort of finished, but I think it might be useful just to get together as a group and have a wider conversation about end user work.
But the OpenSSF end user day CFP is not closed, and I am submitting for a panel of end users for that. And I'm also, I think, going to be on a panel on the broader event, and will obviously pitch the end user working group.
Very cool. All right, thank you very much. So that's that one. Next one on the agenda. is the National Cybersecurity Strategy. So most people probably aware of that dropping today. Again, more of a public service announcement that that is a document that's been dropped from the US White House. It looks like it's got quite a lot to it. It's quite a detailed document that I think has got a lot of ramifications to end users, particularly, and it's quite pertinent, I think, to this group. So raising again for information purposes, I did have a link that was passed on to me there, but I don't have a link to the actual document itself. So I don't know if people have access to that. Maybe it could be pasted in the notes. Thanks, Brian.
Great.
If people want to put it into there, Jack.
I just have the fact sheet document. Does someone have a link to the full?
The full document's linked at the top of the announcement.
Yeah,
Oh, not for the
that's what I was
CSIS one, the White House one. Okay, I got it. Just give me a second. I have to have it open.
there. That's right. Right there.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, so I guess the thing that was interesting to me from the snippets that I've seen, it looks perhaps like the tragedy of the Digital Commons paper has had some impact on policymaker thinking, in that they're sort of talking about the allocation of responsibility to those who are best able to bear it, which, if it's following, I haven't read the full thing yet, so I don't know what the detail is. But that sounds very much like what was being argued in Tragedy of the Digital Commons, is that more responsibility needs to be laid at the vendors who package and redistribute.
Yeah, you can trace a
Suggest that
straight
we
line
pass that.
between those two things.
Yeah. And if you haven't read Tragedy of the Digital Commons, it is a fantastic paper worth reading.
Yeah, agree. So I think that is probably, as people start to digest it, we should, I mean, I think it'd probably be another good topic to bring up next week, some of the ramifications of that, how we see that affecting end user groups, the work that we're doing, and maybe there's worthwhile getting together and figuring out a strategy to address those issues.
We should, I think, wrap in the whole EU CRA into that also, because in essence, it's going to be doing exactly the same thing, right? By requiring people who produce or sell to go put their software through a series of tests to provide a guaranteed 5-year SLA, those types of activities. So it's going to do the same thing in effect, I think.
Well, big picture to drive action, I think so. I think the strategy, though, is a much better way to approach than what the CRA was doing. Of course, the devil will be in the details of how the implementation comes out, but I think the approach is different. And basically, the summary for those that haven't read it, I mean, there's a lot in there, but the part that is most relevant to software is they're basically saying we want to change contract law so that EULAs can't, as a first step, disclaim all liability. We're going to take that away. And you have to earn that back by following certain safe harbor steps, which would be defined by practices, maybe defined here, also within CISA, right? And so as opposed to just letting everybody do whatever and have no downsides, you have to earn that back. And there's a similar set of words for people who, I think they call them stewards of digital data. So companies—
Data custodian.
Data custodians, that's right. And it's a similar thing. So basically the point being, you're going to be held responsible if you're negligent in leaking data and or shipping software that has problems and you didn't follow best practices, which is, I think, a very different approach than what the CRA was trying to do. One that
even using the same,
yeah,
it's using some of the same language in disclaiming liability. You can't disclaim liability, and it conflicts with open source licenses very specifically.
Yes,
Yeah,
but they say that they're putting that on companies, not on the open source producers.
Yeah.
In fact, it specifically says the responsibility should be on the companies, not on the end users, where it is today, or placed on open source developers.
I
That's how I read
remember
it.
discussions with people who would say, oh, like there's the disclaimer of liability and you've signed a contract. And I'm like, you have no idea how much power a legislature has to amend contract law.
Yeah, that's basically what they're suggesting to do here, right?
Yeah, they can reach into any contract and change it, and if they think the public is served by it. And I've usually sort of given that warning in the context of like a hypothetical where something very catastrophic happens and legislatures just freak out and upset the whole thing. There was something else I was going to say, but it's escaped me now. Never mind.
Is there any suggestion where those standards or best practices are going to be curated? I know that CISO is roughly mentioned, but that's the one that's interesting to me. And that,
Yeah,
I think it sounds positive, a positive step, but where is that going to be? Because I guess as our group, we're likely to want to participate in that to make sure that it's.
the last page 37, talks about the implementation, and you know, there's a lot of words there, and you know, I've had time to think about this because I was invited to see an early draft of this about 6 weeks ago, and in my mind, I think the way this plays out is there will be a number of different initiatives, you know, because they're talking about software liability, they're talking about cyber insurance, there's IoT, there's a lot in this big picture. But I think what happens, it will look a lot like when NTIA kicked off the multi-stakeholder process that ultimately led to the SBOM. In my mind, that's what I'm envisioning happening here, because throughout the document, it calls a lot on public-private, you know, collaboration, which is exactly what that NTIA process would look like. And so, yeah, that's how I imagine this will unfold. And I feel like there was somewhere in there where it referred both as an example of the safe harbors to CISA standards, but also something to the effect of other industry defined best practices, which could be read to mean things coming out of the OSSF like SALSA, C2CF, and those types of things. That's how I've internalized this.
Got it. Well, all right. Definitely one I think that's going to be a big focus for a lot of people. So some good reading ahead, I think. Maybe as people read through it, it might be useful to start putting commentary into the Slack channel. I know we don't use the Slack channel that as much or that much at all, really. But I think there's going to be a lot of activity over the next couple of days and a week or so, rather than waiting until the next 2 weeks to actually discuss it. I think maybe suggesting, you know, if people read and see particular pieces that they think of as of interest, throw that into the Slack channel for a bit of a lively debate. Is a good bit of clickbait. All right.
I think that'd be helpful. I also want to mention one thing while we're talking about this. I don't know how many of you are planning on attending the OpenSSF public policy meeting tomorrow morning. That is going to, so there is a period, there's an opportunity now for us to submit potential amendments to the CRA. And the public policy meeting being led by Intel is driving this activity. And so they've scheduled, I think, a 90-minute, 2-hour meeting tomorrow morning for people to have input into how what these amendments look like, how they're crafted. So I will try and be on part of it, but due to conflicts, won't be able to be on the whole thing. I don't know. Is anybody else from here planning on being on that?
That doesn't seem to have got into the published calendar.
No,
So,
it was just decided in the public policy meeting this Tuesday. And so I'm sure they just didn't update it. So I'll forward the meeting I'll put the meeting invite in this working group in the chat. So let me go find that and put it in here.
I think a reason might be that the public policy group was supposed to be a government board appointed group to do public policy kind of things. Not saying that you shouldn't share it, but I at least wanted to mention that if somebody has an opinion on that.
But it's an OpenSSF group, not a government sponsored group.
I think originally it was government appointed.
It's a governing board committee.
Yeah, they're two different things.
Oh, okay.
But okay, well, this is the reason why it probably was not published wider in a wider context, but tomorrow's activity might still be open. So that is, if you're talking about two different things, that might be just the reason behind it.
Crow, what do you think?
I'll ping a meet right now, and hopefully she can get back with me on what her thoughts, if we can make that a wider audience. Just give me a couple minutes and don't ask me to talk.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that's going to be interesting. Thank you very much for that one. And okay, so next one up, Andrew, you got a piece about the vice chair and recruitment.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First off, I'm going to be stepping down as the vice chair of the end user working group. I still want to be very involved. In fact, I'd really like to kind of drive membership to this group. The reason I'm stepping down is as we get more, as this group has matured and we're beginning to get into developing more and more content, I simply don't have the cybersecurity background. I have the open source background. I've been in open source for over 20 years, but I don't have the cybersecurity background and don't have the domain expertise to contribute to a lot of this content. So I think this group deserves someone who has much deeper cybersecurity experience to drive this. I really think it should be an end user, given the nature of the group. But I wanted to throw that out there. I do want to throw a name in the ring here, someone who I've seen be very active, but it doesn't need to be open. I think Jacques could be a great number 2 for this group. And so but I did want to let people know I'm not stepping down from the group. I would like to frankly focus on, I think I can add value around driving more membership. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Very cool. Thanks.
Jonathan, thoughts?
Well, I think, as you say, it needs to be open. I mean, so I'd second that for Jacques. Good man. You're, I think you've been here since the very beginning, and a huge contribution to the work we're doing around end user group and open source in general. So I definitely second that. And anyone else thinking about that too, or any other support? Yay, nay, thoughts around it? Some 3 thumbs, quite a few thumbs. All right. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Oh, that was. Oh, is that a question, Crobe, or is that that's a question?
I have a follow-up on my action item.
All right.
Amit said, go ahead and share that with this group. That will be fine.
Cool. Thank you very much, Crobe. All right.
On the other matter, Jacques.
Also, +1 Jacques.
Jacques, are you willing to accept the mantle of responsibility?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I was thinking of elbowing that other bloke out of the way for the coronation. Yeah, I want my head on some money. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. I'm very flattered and honored, of course, to take on the position. So thank you all for your support. I'm really moved.
Awesome, fantastic, Jacques. That's great to hear. And Andrew, do you want to give a little bit more color to the sort of recruitment focus? You said focus on recruitment. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I think we need to continue to recruit new members to this group. It's always good to have new blood, new opinions, new perspectives, people who can actually contribute. I think we still need to focus obviously on end users. I've begun to build a pipeline of people I want to reach out to at groups at end users who are members yet, such as Uber and Boeing and JP Morgan and entities like that. I think we need a healthcare participant. I think we should definitely look for representatives from the regulated industries, healthcare, and a regular government participant. We need to broaden that, I think, and maybe an EU participant. So I'll put together, and I'm happy to have people work with me, and in fact need others to participate in this process and think about who they know and who they can help us reach out to. But happy to start putting together a list of targets for us to reach out to. I think we should use the Vancouver event as a recruiting opportunity. I think there'll be, if you look at the other foundation events that are happening during that time, there will certainly be a lot of other end users there. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, great one. I think it's really positive. We've got 21 people on the call right now. So there's a lot of people, a lot of interest. And I think Andrew, you and I have talked to many others, and a lot of people are in the background trying to feed information into here and taking content away, not necessarily have joined the group. So I think what we're trying to look at is trying to join the two things and bring people closer in. So great that you're able to focus on that. Thanks, Andrew. Dan?
I was just going to mention, I'm happy to help. I was thinking specifically of UK government, since I have some ties to the UK government. I can try and see if I can find a UK government participant to join this call.
Great.
Really good, actually, thinking about that. So do I. I talked to them, and they have expressed interest to join, but haven't followed up on that. So maybe you and I also we can double check. Yeah. All good. Fantastic. Thank you. Right, next item on the agenda, an open source consumption manifesto. So some work that I've been very interested in seeing suggested from Brian. But Brian, do you want to take it away? Give an intro to this?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jonathan. So Jonathan and I have been kind of planning to write content for like 6 months now, and just life, at least 6. It's like September, and life and other events and everything else keep getting in the way. But back in November or so, I dragged Jeff Wayman into this to help me actually put some words from the thoughts, combining a white paper that Jonathan had written and leaning heavily on some of the learnings that came out of the Tahoe event that many of you were at. In the all-day board meeting, I kind of got on the soapbox a little bit and said, we're all talking about these really hard to solve problems, but our data shows that 96% of the time people just make bad choices because the fixed version is already out there. And so talking about better tools and better education and all these things, while important, per my data, is focused on solving 4% of the problem. And there seemed to be a group of people that that message resonated with. And so we were trying to put together kind of a sort of hyperbolic call to action to sort of re-level the focus a bit, that everybody is focused on this 4% of the problem. Can we shout a little bit to try to get people to focus on, if we can get consumers to make better choices now, they can solve a big part of this problem, and it doesn't take decades for the next generation of engineers to come along and for everything to migrate to memory safety and better tooling. Like literally, if people stopped downloading the vulnerable version of Log4j today, that matters. And I haven't looked today, but last week that number was still at 29% of the time. People are consuming the Log4j thing, and we're now 14, 15 months past. So this is what I'm saying. Like, people can make better choices. Stop eating the tainted food, would you? And so where we kind of iterated towards it, how do we get this message out, is we thought about the Agile manifesto, which back in the day was a bit of a screed to basically say, we think this is really important and we want to get it out there. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And, I think we wanted to see if we could get buy-in to more of this group, because I think this is kind of the right group that represents it. And I think the key to keep in mind is I don't think we want to go and bike shed every super detail. It, much like we were saying about the cybersecurity strategy, it's a call to action, not a specification and a list of every single damn thing that you need to do. Those things are being defined elsewhere, like SALSA and C2CF. I think we just want to highlight this growing problem for people. So that's what we're trying to do with the manifesto. So Jonathan, I see your hands up. I'll pass it back to
you. Yeah, just to really add to that, right? I mean, it's quite interesting to see. I'd put together a threat model of a sample architecture, and subsequently we're building on that with Henrik and the rest of the group. And as I sort of applied like the last 7 years worth of exploit data in a fairly abstract fashion, and Henrik has highlighted that's the wrong way to do it, and you should use a taxonomy. So I've learned from that. But identified where the attacks are actually coming, and would present themselves to that architecture and realized that there is a huge amount of that on the consumption part. So whilst, as Brian's saying, we're looking at really looking at supply chain and software security holistically, there's a massive outweighed value and focus on that consumption piece from an end user perspective. And what I'm trying to do, or I've been trying to do, is try to get that message out, talk to other industries, enterprises, participants, just to see, just to make people aware of that and get people to start to look at how to mitigate that particular issue. As Brian's saying, there's lots of different things that we're trying to do here as a group and as other industry participants, but that one seems to be one that's really super important. And Brian, maybe we sort of bring up that document so that people can see what we're talking about. But as we're doing that, I noticed, Alexa, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah. How much is that actually people downloading the outdated Log4j, and how much is it the outdated scripts, CI/CD manifests, and so on and so forth? So basically, something that is already codified, written, and the machines are now doing the work.
I mean, I would assert, does it matter? Because if they're continuing to build that thing, they're downloading it presumably because they're building it, which means they haven't made a change. So, I'm not sure the distinction matters really.
Well, the distinction is based on the fact that if we throw a manifesto, then it's aimed at people. How much this can be addressed by additional scanning, maybe even blocking out certain things, and so on. So I totally understand that there's a social part and the technology part here. I wonder if we did everything necessary to solve the technology part.
Technology exists to solve this problem. I mean, Sonatype's been selling it for 10 plus years, and we're not the only one. The problem is organizations were completely ignoring this and unprepared. When Log4j happened, we had customers who remediated their entire portfolio of tens of thousands of applications in days. And then the rest of the world was freaking out for months just trying to figure out where we use Log4j. That's kind of the point of this manifesto, is that like you need to take control of your supply chain and pay attention to what's actually going in your software. Full stop, right? Whether you're continuing to build stuff that has a broken version in it a year or not, like I think that's still evidence of the same problem.
Okay, but they're downloading it from somewhere.
Yeah,
is that somewhere at fault?
Could I suggest we follow this up in a Slack conversation? Like I feel like this one could easily go on for the rest of the call.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good go, Jacques. Thank you, mate. Pierre Giorgio, I think you had your hand up next, and then go on to Jessica.
Yeah, so just a reflection, maybe to be a bit provocative. With the new generative models like ChatGPT, which generates code, will be part of this open source consumption, because I think people will start using this, and this could also end up being like helping you to write vulnerable code, and oftentimes there are interns writing code. How would you tackle this into the consumption manifesto for this?
I think that's kind of separate. I think my view is yeah, I can see that as potentially a risk, but the manifest is more focusing on in consumption of open source software and known vulnerable or malicious looking open source software, and getting vendors and consumers of that software to at least start to look and put the shields up in whatever way that's possible. There's multiple different technical ways of doing so, but sort of put that up. Someone using ChatGPT to write poor code and malicious vulnerable code in the first place, also bad, but this is really focused more on the consumption. Just my view on that.
I guess just to add on that, John, right? By definition, we would have a repository tied to the open source that's being consumed, right? Which ChatGPT doesn't provide. So that's why I think I agree with you with that view.
Makes sense, Pierre, or? Yeah, Jessica, coming to you.
Great, thank you. Actually, I'm really interested in this because I've been working on something and I've actually shared with some of the people on this call that has a tentative working title of a secure software covenant, but it's partially about the consumption of open source software, but it's really about the consumption of any software and about the production of software. And so I was wondering, would this be an appropriate forum for me to come in and share, like the same way that Brian has shared this now, throw it up into a Google Doc and get people noodling on it? I'm new to this.
I think yes,
Okay.
and like I mentioned, I spoke to Aaron about that on Friday because I knew that there was some stuff overlapping there. But the way I kind of think about it is sort of the manifesto is kind of calling for action in one under discussed area. The covenant is a follow-up to that balances across the whole thing. So the manifesto is kind of saying we need to do some things about this. Here's some evidence of why, and here's where you need to look. The covenant can be a thing that people say, yeah, for everybody who's already enlightened, we promise, because it is sort of a promise, where a manifesto is a bit of a shout, right? So
I can see them being really complementary. In fact, I could see in the implementation guide for the covenant referring to the manifesto. So super excited. One more question. What's the timeline on you making this more public?
We've wanted to get it out ahead of the strategy. That clearly didn't work. But we think it's best coming from the OSSF, or because it's aligned with the mission, as opposed to just something that Jonathan, Jeff, and I write in the corner of the internet somewhere. And so that bringing it here to this group is sort of an attempt to kind of try to get at least a consensus, if not perfect agreement. And then we'd like to take it and get it on the OSSF blog. But I think, the policy around that right now seems a little bit ambiguous, but certainly if a working group has kind of looked at it and given it the nod, then we should be able to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, is like as soon as we can, really, right? But I mean, it's our fault, right? I'll take the blame as well here, right? We've been trying to do this for 6 solid months. It's just other things have gotten in the way. And I think we've iterated it quite a lot, but it's really at the point now just to get that extended feedback to see, is this something that people agree with or can sort of refine, get additional support, yay or nay, and push that forward. So kind of as soon as we can, but realistically, the next couple of weeks sort of thing would be my proposal. I think, Jessica, as we said before, I think this is absolutely complementary to the great work that I've seen coming on the covenant, absolutely complementary to that, and I do think this particular working group would be a great next step for the covenant too, right? So it's not like this is one and done for the discussion around the consumption manifesto. Let's maybe bring it up and show people now, but we'll be back next week to talk about it, I'm sure, and let's talk about the covenant also at the same time.
Okay. Cool. I'm going to copy your MO then. Thank you.
Dan, I think you got your hand up there.
Actually, I think Jay was before me.
Oh, sorry. Where's Joe?
Jay.
To me, it's me, Jonathan. It's Jay.
Oh, hey, Jay. What?
So I think this is a fantastic idea. One comment I have, because or maybe it's just to say, I hope we take some time with this, because I think this is a great opportunity to not just talk about what we see, but also what's on the horizon. I think that we have an opportunity to make some predictions here, whether for good, bad, or for good, bad, or indifferent, some predictions that'll help us forecast issues to come. Otherwise, we're just continuously talking about the same wheel 1,000 different ways. We need to talk about how that wheel expands, different spokes, all kinds of stuff. I'm more than willing to jump into the conversation and put my 2 cents in there too, just because all the work that we're doing across the OpenSSF, and I mean all the work that we're doing, we're doing some fantastic things, and we're getting as creative as possible. But I think the stuff that happens here could kind of tie all that together if we're expanding our thoughts and really synthesizing all the information we're taking in to produce something that can live and breathe for years to come, something that's scalable for years to come. So that's just the only thing I wanted to throw in there, to make sure that when we're doing this, is not quick. This type of manifesto can't be quick, because we have the potential to say some things that we can 5, 10, 15 years out say, hey, this could happen if we don't do this and this can happen, right? So that's the only thing I wanted to throw out there. Let's take our time with it.
Sorry, Jay, I missed your hand there because Zoom is playing up and I can only see the pictures.
All good. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, John.
Dan, you had your hand up?
I was going to quip that we needed a domain name, obviously, if we've got a manifesto. But I don't know.
That's a great
I don't
idea.
know how useful that is. But also just, I agree with what Jay is saying about predictions. However, I also feel like when you've got some energy around something like this, you need to work with relative quickness, or else the energy dissipates. And so it's valuable to put a stake in the ground. Having been involved with a couple of other technology manifestos, I think it's valuable to put a stake in the ground, even if we don't feel it's completely finished, especially if we want to be making the point that OpenSSF can be a great place to build these standards and technologies that can address the issues that have been raised in the public policy statement that, as we were talking about earlier. Then I think it could be a good opportunity to draw attention to that. So anyway,
if I can go next and then cede to Robert. I agree with Dan in that I think it's one to iterate on, right? We can definitely iterate on, but my concern is that there's a real growing threat that I see in this particular area that people aren't aware of, and it's really raised that awareness. I think feedback from Jay in that there's a lot of sort of forward thinking that makes complete sense there. I'm just concerned about how long we can wait, because when I'm talking to a lot of different enterprises and consumers, that not a lot of people are picking up on this. We are in a little bubble here, right? I think a lot of people here are totally aware of this sort of stuff. And you reach out to a couple of people in OSSF and absolutely lots of heads nodding and stuff. You start to reach out a little bit further, and people just don't seem to grok what's going on or see what's coming at them, or appreciate that there are technical solutions that they can start building now, even if they write it themselves, to start to make some of these fixes. So it's really trying to really raise that awareness. That's really my focus point. Robert, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I agree with everyone, but at the same time, for instance, I was part of writing the GitOps principles, and we made sure to version it. So the GitOps principles as of right now is version 1.0. So that could be kind of like a midway point of actually having a versioned manifest that could then get updated, but at the same time get it out quickly. So sort of like a middle ground thing.
Good call. I wasn't sure whether it was Shaq or Brian next.
Brian's next.
Yeah, so thanks. Yeah. I think the versioning is a great idea. And just to reinforce what Jonathan said in reaction to Jay, like I look at this as more of like a single issue manifesto as opposed to the whole thing. And I think that can be useful because, like I said, we feel like this is an area that doesn't get enough attention, and trying to make it too big and do all the things, well, that's perfect being the enemy of the good, one. And two, for everybody that kind of does understand aspects of this might breeze over it and think it's just another version of the same thing and not actually catch the main point here, which is nobody's really paying enough attention to this issue. So let's lean hard on that issue and not make it look like it's trying to be the covenant or, SALSA or S2C2F and all these other things. I think being hyperbolic in one issue, like I said, we're just trying to level the playing field. We're not trying to say that this is more important than all the other things. We are saying, though, that it can have, as a consumer, a more immediate effect. You don't have to wait. And I got to this line of thinking slowly over a long period of time, and then all at once, in talking to people who were like, yeah, that SBOM thing, I'm waiting for the industry to produce SBOMs for all of my dependencies. And until that happens, I can't do anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, there are lots of tools that can do that. There are free tools that can help you do this. Waiting for the world to solve the problem is not the right answer. And that's kind of what we're trying to convey here.
Jacques?
Yeah, I think it's a great initiative. I was wondering how open are you to sort of like wordsmithing suggestions in terms of it? Because I agree that like a good manifesto has a generous dollop of hyperbole and, reaches, there's a speech writing expression, reach for the marble.
Yeah.
That I would love to try and pour on.
I think that's exactly what we're looking for. I think we don't want to try to expand it to be all the things. I feel like
absolutely, yeah,
more in this case. And as comparing like the CRA to what the national strategy is, I think that's exactly it. Where the CRA tried to be more precise, that's what everybody got wrapped around the axle on, versus saying, can we agree big picture? This is the right direction. So I think we definitely would be open to ways to kind of reduce it and focus it.
Like a good manifesto is either short or long with a single message. And like the two ones I think of as sort of classic manifestos is the Agile Manifesto, which is just 4 sentences basically with some puff around the edges, and the Communist Manifesto, where it's just sort of like meant to motivate. I'm not a bullshit, don't worry. Is meant to motivate this action, right? And it tells its message simply and sort of eloquently.
We spent a lot of time trying to reduce it, right? We spend a lot of trying to reduce the principles. I think there's a real focus on that. I think wordsmithing it again, 100%. So I think I agree. I think when it gets to the point of, well, it'd look better if we added this, added that, then we start to step in a different version territory. But absolutely, let's change the language. I mean, get more.
Yeah, if you can share the draft of the blog too. I don't think that's linked out there, but that helps provide more context. And I think we were trying to find the right balance of putting the explanation for it mostly in a different document to keep the manifesto as tight as we could. I don't know if we struck the exact balance, but there is another piece with more behind this. That's how we were trying to separate it.
So, Brian, have you gone through the Sterling toolchain strategy document that's going to be discussed in the board meeting in 15 minutes?
No, I have not. Okay. Not if it's been significantly updated since November, no.
Yeah, it's the outcome. It's the kind of the formal outcome of what we all discussed in that meeting. So I would think I can send this around to some folks after the board meeting. I think it's worth it because I think that the manifesto is obviously a longer term view or document, but for this next year or so, the Sterling toolchain is going to be the focus of OpenSSF. Right, they're making that pretty clear in this document. I think that'll be resolved in this meeting coming up. So I'd just like to see how that plays into the manifesto. I think there can be some alignment, some supporting language there, but it's worth taking into consideration, I guess.
I think let's absolutely take a look at it. But I think that the point, because you're right, I think we need to focus on the Sterling toolchain as like one of the driving focuses for SSF in my view, and as a governing board member, right? I think what the manifesto is, though, is that I think, to belabor Brian's point a little, of all the things that you need to look at from a consumer, that's probably one that should be pretty high up on your list to provide that benefit, right? Do that one, and then absolutely look at the Sterling toolchain.
Yeah, and if we're not careful in our messaging, then that example I gave around people waiting for SBOMs could then become, well, I'm waiting for the OSSF Sterling toolchain, which we know is not happening tomorrow. And in the meantime, ... I'm just going to keep on using the broken versions I have right now. Like that would be a tragic outcome. And I think that's the difference. So I think we need to be careful in how we message that.
All right, we've had the time check, appropriate time check. That's one of the things we need to perhaps have as a formal position within the group, a time check expert. Look, I think there's been a healthy discussion about the manifesto. Let's make sure that we distribute it. It'd be great to get feedback from that. Looking at the agenda, I did add architectures on this to go through and review and add more to the architectures as a form of working session. The reality is that we've got 10 more minutes. I was hoping that was going to be a 30-minute session. If happy to take people's view on this, but I was going to jump over that, save that for an ad hoc session and look at additional notes from other working groups. Is that reasonable, do we think? Yep. Excellent. All right. So assuming there are notes from other working groups, I think there's already a list that's been added to the email chain here. Has anyone got any notes from other working groups? Yep. Go for it, Crow.
Hopefully mine will go quick. We are in the process of a TAC election. So I put some details in there. First off, any participant within the OpenSSF is eligible to vote, but you need to register. It takes about 30 whole seconds and you need a GitHub ID. So I would encourage everyone to follow the voter eligibility self-nomination form. Anyone is welcome to self-nominate for the TAC itself. So if you think you would like to participate in helping steer the technical direction of the foundation, there is a form to fill that out. That does not take 30 seconds. You'll need to do a little homework and pre-work before you fill that out, but everyone is welcome to do that. And then thirdly, there is a concept of the security community individual representative that is also up for election. So if anyone, and this is generally a person that's not affiliated with a governing board organization, but anyone that's interested in being that community representative, that is also being up for nomination and election. So please fill that form out if you're interested in that. And then I have the dates of when everything's going to execute. So we need to get the voter registration done by March 12th, and then they will send out the, they're going to validate everyone that is eligible for all the 3 roles, and then we'll vote at the end of March. Any questions about that?
You're putting the link in chat and said, Crow?
I put it on the agenda. But I can put it.
Okay. No,
it's very wordy. It went out to the TAC mailing
Details.
list. I don't know that they've shared it with a lot of the and the other working groups. I've shared it with all my working groups, and I would encourage this group to send it out to their mailing list too. Any other questions about that?
Very cool, very worthwhile.
And then my other item is an action item for Jonathan and this group. The end user working group gets to come to the TAC next Tuesday to talk about all the amazing progress and activities. I provided a link to the template that we're going to be using over in the best working group to have, we've been called up to talk. So feel free to leverage that. That's the format the TAC likes to see. If you need help, let me know. And that is it.
Awesome.
I have spoken.
Thank you for that, group. We'll be there on the 7th. I might reach out to you for that, for help for that. Thank you. Jacques.
Yeah, just a quick update from the Securing Software Repos group. We've got some folks who put up their hand and volunteered to prepare the design or the proposal for how the shared repository will work, or the shared like metadata and samples repository that we've talked about in this group and other groups. So SSR is taking point on that one. I don't have a fixed timeline at this time. Everybody's always busy, as we know, but just wanted to let you know that the wheels are in motion.
That's excellent news. Jacques. And Henrik.
Yeah, well, I had a question regarding this architecture, but we can take this after we went through this agenda item. So you were so quickly before that I didn't find the unmute button in time.
Sorry. Okay, we'll come to that in a second. I think we're rounding out on the other one now. Any other working groups that people or notices that people want to bring up? No? All right. Henrik, do you want to go with your question?
Yes, I think we discussed like 2 or 4 weeks ago that we have this agenda item being added to the calendar to work on this architecture, right? And so I wanted to know whether this is and when this will happen.
Yes, it's my fault. I'd reached out to Cahill to add it to the calendar, and we were adding it to the calendar, but he asked for additional information. I didn't have time to follow up, so that's absolutely on me. And I will ping him again and give him the right date.
All right. Any input needed for this additional information, or you have everything you?
It was just some of the stuff for the internal GitHub thing, but it's really just, I guess we can ask now, is there any particular date that people want to hold that conversation on architectures? I am pretty flexible and probably more European based, but anyone else? Thoughts for timing?
Yeah, Europe friendly would be nice.
Should we go for a 12 o'clock spot at on a day of your choice, Jacques?
Yeah, I can always do 12 o'clock. I keep that slot open. But in terms of Europe friendliness, I can also come in earlier. Depending on the day, but most days are good. I could be vaguer if you want.
All right, tell you what, Henrik, why don't you pick a date, pick a time? I think anytime European, and Jack's good for sort of 12-ish or
yeah, I can, and I can come in earlier because I'm on Eastern time. So
give me a date, Henrik, and we'll fire it over to Cahill.
I can do, I don't know, any evening, European evening between, I don't know, 5 and 7 or so, European CET.
All right, date is going in of Thursday, the 9th at that time. I'll fire it over to Cahill. Done. And apologies once again for my tardiness in that. You see, Jacques, now he's the vice chair, is going to hold me to account and hold us to account and we'll get stuff done.
I'm practicing my finger wag.
You saying I was too easy on you, Jonathan?
Not at all. Not at all. We've all got day jobs, many day jobs. Right. So any other business, or we will give people some time back? No? All right. So a couple of things to follow up. Everyone, I'm sure, is going to read that document. Let's use Slack to feed things back. Have a great end of the week and weekend. And thank you very much. And
Jonathan, sorry, just to clarify on the manifesto thing, it's the document. I pasted the URL to that document in the minutes. You're looking for people to feedback as suggestions or comments and stuff like that. This is a call for comments from this group. Yeah.
And support. It's not just a commentary one. It's yep, makes sense to me. I would support that. I don't think we've really thought about how we'd track that necessarily. Maybe a comment at the top, or we can add sort of signatories at the bottom. Maybe that one. But I think it's really a call for support as well. Does this make sense?
Share this URL on the OpenSSF Slack in our channel as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Sounds good to me. And just one more call out to Jessica for the covenant. Looking forward to sort of getting that into the Slack as well, and catching up and in detail the next meeting.
Okay, will do.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks all for joining.